our circumstances and experiences all stemmed from the intent, so we can see that our overall experience is our intent, that we are the culmination of our intent. And this is why the real awareness, the isness, life is referred to also as the real intent. For we are our intent, so to stand real with the is has us embracing then an intent to be that which we are, this being of light with the is, and we are that which the intent is. But overall we can see that the process is a long one, and so we are extensively taken through it constantly on the real side life is, and our personal selves are shown glimpses of it through our nightly real side experiences. Hence the purpose of these mega real side universities, where all manner of species, aliens and beings, those that have decided to become more aware, receive their trainings. The guides are always in attendance. Dwayne and Ava are consistent in their presence there also, including a number of excelling individuals who are given positions almost as teachers in their own right, as the guides recognize their skills and abilities in this regard, and have trust in their sincerity. For once there were places called the Golden Temples, back in Paul's day, designated places for the personal self to relate to, but again just created places in creation, and not the ultimate, not the actual recognition of the standing real in the true reality. These universities on the real side would be along similar lines, designated created places, but designed as a benefit for all life, though I suggest more extensive, due to the sheer volume of individuals waking up the length and breadth of this particular simulation at this time. It surely is an almighty creational, multi-dimensional wake-up on a scale never before experienced. Anyway, I have had a number of experiences in various universities of this type, and also witnessed a few dark force deceptive replicas, as they have a tendency to interfere, obfuscate, and misdirect through any avenue and opportunity they can. On this occasion I was with an individual in one of these universities, and it was as though we were between lessons, or periods of sharing and real education. We had been receiving faint impressions through our real awareness, as though an individual was trying to reach out to us from a far-away place. These impressions had only grown stronger until the point where we could discern a voice as a cry for help, very tangible at this point, as though the individual whose voice it was in a predicament and was crying out for assistance. We would take it upon ourselves to assist this person, as though a little extra-curricular activity on our part between the real education sessions at the university. And as we reached out to this person through our awareness, we effectively opened ourselves up to an individual we at first felt genuinely required our aid. When we open up to individuals, when we accept them, when we connect with them in whatever way we do, there is agreement there that allows them to feature in our experience. For nothing and anybody can be in our experience without our express agreement on a conscious or unconscious subconscious level. This would include any attacks on the physical or the real side, for we create the potentiality of attack through the specifics and nature of the agreement to the assailant that allows the attack to take place. Broadly speaking, if we agree to an individual, or say the controller's power over us, we have created the potentiality for the controllers or the individual to express this control over, over us. We have given them permission to abuse us, in other words, and thus they generally will, as ill-intended, inclined characters that they are. Some people even consciously surrender power to others, an agreement to abuse, and we see examples of this in a variety of distorted sexual acts and activities, for example. But mostly these agreements are subconsciously ingrained, installed, and locked into the created consciousness through the fear of non-acquiescence to authority, and thus the experience stage is set and primed for the constant attack and imposition of the controllers and their ill-intended infringement on our experience individually and collectively. And so we had opened ourselves up to this individual. We had agreed then to his presence in our experience. All well and good if such an individual is intended from a making sense with all life perspective. But it's quite a jungle out there, on the physical and especially the real side, and much of what the personal self sees on the surface is not the real actuality of the situation. This is where the real awareness can see creation beyond the filters and agreements, ideas and considerations and assumptions of the personal self. Because all of these personal self attitudes and ideas create illusionary bubble realities and filters that can hide what is real. What we consider about an individual is what we have decided to add to the bubble experience of our personal selves, and we can add shields of overlapping filters that conceal who an individual actually is, if we can't get through our considerations of that person. We can even consider someone in an undeserved poor light, and this will even add these filters to our real side experience of an encounter with them. We are not seeing them as they are. We are seeing them as we think they are. Very often then, what we mainly see is just ourselves and our idea projections. The real awareness is beyond the ideas and considerations, the attitudes of the personal self, and if we can step into the objective view of the real awareness, we can see everything as it actually is, without any obfuscation or filtered layers. Filtered layers we either have created ourselves, or those we have agreed to from others, as of course all these various dark force characters, the kings, queens, politicians, present their marketing for the good of humanity fronts, and if we agree with that, we agree to these filters of goodness that conceal these characters for what they actually are. Through the personal self only, then, it's very hard to make any real discernment. It's all created ideas, agreements, considerations that make up a world of illusion based on what we decide and agree with. And so, in this situation, perhaps we were a little too much standing with our personal awareness. We had opened ourselves up to this individual and his plea for assistance, making assumptions as to his genuineness, an assumption that obscured the reality of the situation and this character's intent. For we would start to get nudges from our real awareness that something was amiss, a real awareness that has a complete oversight of everything in creation. For now, we had the impression of sinister undertones, and as we moved more from the assuming bubbles of the personal self, we were afforded the greater clarity of the real awareness, and determined that this individual was not what he seemed. It was, in fact, an entity of a kind, and as I said, for anything to feature in our experience, we must agree, we must let it in, give it permission, if you will, and we had done just this. For this entity would know this also, how agreement allows its presence, and had attempted trickery to establish itself in our experience to undoubtedly carry out its mischief. As we stood in our real awareness, as we received these additional impressions that revealed the individual's identity, we also had a future view. We were shown how agreement to this entity would facilitate its ability to cause havoc not just on the real side, as everything starts there, but through to the physical also. We saw how this entity would utilize the very computers and televisions as a kind of access point to the physical, and cause its decided disruption in our physical lives. For these entities are disembodied beings that generally frequent the lower astral, and as experience and positioning in life is equal to intent, focus, and decision, as everything equals itself, then to find yourself in the lower astral, the hellish nightmare realms of creation, this is rather a hint as to your created consciousness and how it is constructed. Not the sort of characters, then, you'd invite over for dinner. These entities are constant in their want to establish themselves on the physical, and much by way of possession of body vehicles is commonplace on the physical. This can be so due to people aligning themselves with the lower astral, and that which dwells there, through that which they decide. Alcohol, drugs, heavy metal music, as examples, Like attracts like. Many times I have seen these entities latching onto individuals on the real side, and again, nothing can they latch onto without agreement, and if one is aligning with them and their lower astral realm through choice, this is a tantamount to agreement that such can occur. They also seek to not only possess, but usurp and steal body vehicles if given the chance, displacing the individual whose vehicle it was, forcing a premature transition for the undoubtedly shocked and surprised person. Also, they are able to utilize technology as a conduit. As I said, like attracts like. You line up frequencies that are the same, then they can intermingle, and that which dwells in the frequencies can transition from one to the other. Generally, the various levels of creation are segregated dimensionally, although only in literal personal self terms, and entities cannot cross easily from the astral to the physical. The technology is a black magic dark force distortion, with the equally as distorted frequencies they choose to operate the computers, cell phones, etc. through, and it's no accident that the technology aligns very nicely with the lower astral in frequency terms, and this then allows a conduit to the lower astral, as the frequencies of the distorted technology align with this forbidding creational level. And I've had experiences where these technological frequency conduits are being taken advantage of by the opportunist entities. The dark forces will be well aware of this, and naturally anything they do is for control, to cause distraction, to cause emotional turmoil, to have us engaged through our emotional and mind vehicles, to keep us one-dimensionally focused through the 5 body vehicles, to claim our attention and focus by any means necessary. Overall, all of that translates to agreement, which keeps us the effect of creation and our personal selves, and keeps us as unconscious reincarnating slaves on this 100% human farming planet. If allowing conduits through technology for entities to cause havoc has this effect of control and subjugation in creation, then the controllers are all over it. And so, having determined this individual to be an entity, having determined its intent, having a future view of the potential physical level havoc it may cause, using the computers and TV technology as a conduit, we retracted our agreement, severed the connection with this being, and effectively removed our permission to allow it to feature in our experience any longer. So the moral is, be very conscious of all your thoughts, be very aware of all your agreements, exercise caution and discernment with whoever you encounter in your ongoing experience here on the physical and the real side. Move beyond the assumption and considerations of the personal self that cloud intent, judgment, and endeavour to stand more so in the nowness of your real awareness in all that you do. and all experience that you walk through. Learn to determine the intent on the real side of individuals through your creational overseeing real awareness. And remember, you are the decider of your experience, consciously or unconsciously, and every facet and aspect of it, all the particulars and the characters that feature in our experience, are by our design and choice. We are the architect of our experience. We then move into a position of taking a complete responsibility for our experience as we become more aware and recognize that as decision and agreement permitted these ill-intended characters and their attacks and agendas into our experience, we can then consciously decide their release also, that they can feature no longer. And indeed, this real side experience would be an example of this, that no matter how big, bad, and scary a creature or individual may be, the only actual power they have over us is that which we provide them through our free will decision and agreements. And that was that.
Yowza, Kevin, that was fun. That was a good one. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory as usual, Kevin. Very, very good. And as you explain these things, pre-explain them, like you do, it gives people a heads up as to what to look for, because for the most part, the experiences are rather simple, even though you're going through this and that, but overall it's very simple. But for the personal mind and that literal part of ourselves, we need a lot of explanation and a lot of ways to go with it. So that was true. Wow, time flies. It's almost the hour. So, you kids got anything else, or you want to do the new you?
I just want to mention one thing, if I can, concerning Kevin's entire discourse. I'm fascinated, but this relates very much to what I've been learning here, and the most important thing to me is you actually said it, Dwayne. At one point, you said entities actually have a right to violate your body or your consciousness, in the sense that that's what we're here for. We're actually, he calls this a human farming planet. That had never dawned to me. You'd never hear that in Eckankar. Nobody would ever tell you anything like that. So that's basically, I mean, we're taught that we're here to learn, yes, but at the same time, we don't realize what the stakes are and what's really happening, how we're actually being misled all the time. And that has to do with the fact that somebody is always, I mean, what an incredible challenge for the human consciousness. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Charles, for seeing that and starting to recognize it, because, yeah, well, myself also going through this process and, heading along here and taking a look at what's going on. And just like when I got the Rod of Power in 2001, the first thing the boys introduced me to was the influence. And we were like in a high school gymnasium where you have those lunch tables that you see in movies and whatever, rows of them. Well, there was just a few of us, and there was the influence sitting on the next table over, smiling at me. I immediately recognized who she was, and she became the third head. So Paul gave the hint, he gave the idea of the two-headed God, which most people, they just see God and then there's the devil over there, but he brought that all together for us. And all of a sudden, that was a real eye-opener. And of course, religious communities, they don't care about that idea, but it's very, very real, just like the governments and what they do, etc. But there was this part that people really didn't see. It was very sneaky, and it was really created from the consciousness of all this. And yes, as we're in creation, we are totally vulnerable to everything. It's not that we're here to just be goody-goody people, etc. No, life is big and to recognize everything. So everybody has a right to do whatever they want. So you got to figure out how to defend yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly attacked, and especially unconsciously. So on the surface world, we have the supposed police and the armies and even the government, etc., and authorities that supposedly protect us, but it's really a setup by them to control others, etc., and an excuse, and they really create all the conflicts, and they have the right to do this, and so we're just in this mishmash and trying to figure it out. So more so than just label things like, oh, I'm spiritual and I have nothing to do with that and whatever. Those are cute little ideas we go through when we're kids growing up. But as we grow up and we get out into the real world, we see that, wow, it's, those cute little ideas just don't work anymore. And that's real. And people will ask the question, well, gee, why can't they be nice? Why can't they be honest? Somebody's got to pass a law, whatever. Well, doesn't matter because the lawmakers are crooked and deceptive. They're the ones passing the laws, and those are the ones that people are looking to. So yes, this is a real wake up. So in the corporation, the idea finally came about, oh, the heck with the earth. We just want to get to some place that's nicer and get on with the journey. Well, now you discover that those places are just places that are here and there basically in creation, and that all of life is an isness to be recognized. And yes, it's a heads up to defend yourself, because yes, they do have the right, just like the government, even though they tell you that there are laws and you have rights, but they come right into people's houses and steal everything.
Yep.
Prison if they want to. Yep. And they do this every day of the week. They bomb different countries, etc. And so you can do all the protesting and pass all the laws you want, but you know what? They're just going to say, screw you, we're going to do it anyhow. So what does that tell you? It's a free for all. So real guidance, real education makes sense for the first time through everything we've been through. And yes, thank you, Kevin, for being the great witness. And everybody, thank yourselves for recognizing what's really taking place here, more so than a little cute passive spiritual path where you just stay pizza dough like the members of the corporation, because that's exactly what they are. And you can see that on the real side for yourself. The guide will show you, because they're all duh in their consciousness, thinking that the emotional love attachments are going to do it for them. Well, it does it for the reptilians. But for them, well, they got to figure it out, and they have to decide to take the risk. Yes, thank you, Kevin. And yes, thank you, Charles. It's good to see that people are waking up, that you're waking up. That's what it's for. And so as we all become more aware and real, hey, things became okay. And we have the challenge here to help this world out and help others become more aware. And eventually you recognize how to stand real with the all is, and that is the best part. That is the biggest journey. So it's so cool. Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, well, we're practically at the hour, but unless anybody wants to share anything briefly or ask further questions of Dwayne, and now is your opportunity to do so.
Hey, Dwayne. This is Ramon. I wanted to ask a question. What is the supreme deceptor? I thought it was the influence, but I guess it's not.
That's a very interesting part. As I wrote book 4, The Adventures of Rebazar, this all came into play, my experience with this. And yes, first came the influence. Okay, that's the cuddly part of our personal self that becomes influenced, and we kind of like it. We like to influence others and to be influenced by others. It's kind of a way of life. But then as you go through the curtain and the barriers into other places and levels, all of a sudden there's something else in the darkness. And that's right before the deep dark border and the hidden wherever accesses of the etherical realm, the unconscious mind, which is the supreme deceptor that basically controls everything because of agreement and because of the cause and effect agreements that the Kalam God and others have decided. Well, they've actually created this entity, just like the influence, and the influence is an aspect of that. And so even the Kalam God is, you might say, powerless with this individual. And its reference would be like that of that old movie I saw in high school, Forbidden Planet, with Leslie Nielsen and Jack Kelly, to where this individual, this old movie star, he had discovered another planet, these alien technology, and there he created a monster unconsciously, but he didn't understand what the monster was until these people from Earth came in a flying saucer, and all of a sudden they had to deal with it and finally realized that, hey, you created this monster. So he needed an objective viewpoint. And so, again, that's what the Supreme Deceptor is in the etheric, and I really go over it in book 4. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh.
Okay then, well, if there's nothing else, then thank you everybody for attending, and thank you, Dwayne, and we shall finish with singing the New You song. So let me put the screen on here, let me see. Okay, so Andrew, Liliana, Charles,
New you.
Jeremy,
New you.
Ramon,
New you.
Carver,
You.
Mariam,
New you.
Reza, Ronald,
You.
Tim, Val,
Everybody's invited to the new education call in about 15-20 minutes. Maybe Jeremy can post a link. So thank you. New you.
Vesna, Peter, you, and me, New you, Ava,
Do
and Dwayne.
Great show, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you, and Peter and everybody else involved here. It's all for you. See you next time.
Okay, thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Ava. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.